Hello and welcome back to Anfield Agenda. I'm obviously not Craig today. Craig is on holidays, but I have the pleasure today of being joined by Mr. David Lynch. How are you, David?
Yeah, not too bad. Just getting over a cold, which has nicely hit me in the international break, thanks to my 2-year-old son. So, but apart from that, can't complain. And it's nice to have it. It's a bit more chilled in the international breaks, isn't it? So I'm kind of enjoying that, to be honest.
Yeah, before all the mayhem now, when we come back, the next 10 games are going to be very interesting. We have Chelsea, Aston Villa, Madrid, Man City. Like, you'd have to think by the end of that 10 games, we should really know where this club is at. Like, we even have Slot speaking out recently saying he knows we have a bit of an easier start. Like, if we get through those 10 games, you'd have to think we're serious title contenders, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would think so, and contenders in the Champions League as well, given the sort of the state of the fixtures in that. So it's exciting, really. I mean, I think it's kind of been laced with a bit of negativity. Some of the coverage of this first 10, in terms of people saying, "Well, let's see when they get a real test." But you know, I'm excited to see how Liverpool get on the basis that I think they've not just got the results they've got, but I think they've performed well for a lot of the games as well, and deserve to win every one that they've won. And obviously that Nottingham Forest one was a disappointing one, but outside of that, been really convincing, and the underlying numbers look good as well. So it all adds together to being a pretty strong team that Liverpool have got. But obviously they've now got to kind of go out and prove that. But as I say, really, really looking forward to that and seeing how they get on. And obviously there's a few big Anfield nights in there as well in the Champions League, and some, a game against Chelsea where it's always fantastic to get one over on them if you can. So yeah, I'm really, really excited by it. I think Liverpool, or I hope, I'm very hopeful and optimistic that they're going to kind of surprise people and show that they are a really, really good team.
That's the thing. You can only beat who's in front of you, and like winning is a habit at the end of the day. So like winning all those games against lesser opposition, let's say, isn't going to do any bad. Obviously we have the injuries concerns around like Allison and possibly McAllister. I think he's been training with Argentina, but they're kind of skeptical as to whether he'll play or not. And I know you, David, had covered this week in your Substack the type of procedures the club have brought in to try help with the injuries. Like we have, I think Jonathan Power has been made the head of the medicine department, was it? And then like Ruben Peters coming in. Like, so how do you think that would impact the season? Like, how much they seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on this injury thing just to kind of keep everyone fit? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, it was seen as a huge marker for Arne Slot really coming in, and alongside Ruben Peters, is that they had such a good availability record at Feyenoord, and Liverpool knew as well that the availability record of recent seasons, that isn't really acceptable. It was something that kind of needed to improve, and changes need to be made. I mean, you get a lot of talk about Liverpool and squad depth, and they don't have this or that, but they do have two players in a lot of positions, and two very, very good players in every position. But it always looked like it wasn't enough because they were just getting injuries at a ridiculous rate. And I think, they weren't the worst hit team in the Premier League last season, but they were significantly worse hit than Arsenal and City. And they're the two teams who kind of matter to Liverpool. So, Arsenal having that, ability to consistently pick a similar side, that's been a massive part of why they've been able to find consistency in recent seasons. So, that's got to be the aim, really. And I think we are already seeing signs of improvement. The availability, the amount of games missed at this point last season was much higher than it has been so far. Obviously, that Allison blow has come at the end of the just before the international break, and that is disappointing. But you still got the upside of Konate. He's been on the pitch regularly. Jota's been on the pitch regularly. And as I say, generally the injuries, there's been some improvement there. So I think the early signs of the kind of reshuffle they've had in the medical department, and that sort of change of mindset where they are showing a bit of an excess of caution at times and dropping players out of training sessions, pulling them out of matches, even halfway through with McAllister, even if he probably could have gone on. I think we're seeing early signs that that's working, but obviously the big test is how that gets on over the remainder of the season. But ultimately, for me, I think before you even get into tactics or what the manager changes or signings or what Chiesa does or anything like that, I think there are 5 to 10 points available to Liverpool simply by getting fewer injuries this season. I think it was the main factor in the fall off the latter part of last season. So early signs are good, and if they can keep that going, I really do think it can have a value as much as sort of keeping them in the title race right till the death.
Yeah, like I know it's an extreme example, but even looking back at Leicester's title winning season, I think they pretty much had the same starting 11 every single game. Like there is a lot to be said for that consistency. So yeah, hopefully that should be better moving forward. I want to speak, David, now about Jurgen Klopp's new job, which was announced this morning, which is surprised a few. I've seen a lot of Dortmund fans unhappy about this, and some Liverpool fans as well. Just like Klopp going to a multi-club structure. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, I understand the disappointment. I'm a little surprised in terms of you've always seen him as a manager and a character who's kind of stood against ideas like the Red Bull sort of conglomerate and not really kind of bought into those, not just multi-club model, but the fact it's owned by an energy drink, it really goes against particularly what German football stands for. So I totally get why Dortmund fans are disappointed, and it is a little bit of a surprise given what his character's like. But also you can kind of see the fit there as well in terms of, he's looking for a role where he's not a manager. He's such an appealing character. They've always said, I think it was Mike Gordon always said that, he could have been a CEO of a huge company in America. He's got that kind of mindset and that ability to work with people, the charisma, and the idea of bigger picture stuff as well. He's really adept at that. So it does seem a really good fit for him. And also, of course, the football that he espoused as a manager is very much Red Bull football. So the fit hand in glove there really. But yeah, I am still a little bit surprised. And I'm also kind of surprised that even though it's not as intense as management, that he's coming back as soon as January. I genuinely thought he was going to have, and he said repeatedly, look, I'm going to have a year off at the least. And as I say, it's not quite management he's going back into, and I don't think he'll suddenly age as rapidly as he did when he was at Liverpool now. But I still think to be back in it so soon is a little bit of a surprise. So his holidays only last into January. Maybe he just got really bored at home and his wife got sick of him. I'm not sure, but yeah, a little bit surprised to see that coming around so soon.
I suppose it could be a case of like it's now or never with something like that. That job came up and he just had to jump at it. But aside from that, I suppose this probably does spell the end of his like time as club manager, isn't it? I know he has a clause in his contract where he can go take the Germany national job if that comes up. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets that next year too. But do you think that is his intentions now to not manage a club again?
Yeah, and I think he's been, he didn't sort of outright say that, but he was kind of massively hinting at it in all his interviews he did after leaving Liverpool, that he was kind of happy with what he's done, and he didn't see himself going back to England, he didn't see himself going back to Germany, and he wondered whether he's not going to rock up at Real Madrid, is he? That's not kind of a good fit for him, or probably even Barcelona either. And Italian football not massively appealing at the moment, so it would have been a big surprise to see him go back into club management. I think what we all thought was kind of that he would just be waiting for that Germany job, but obviously the timing at the moment probably not quite right in terms of Julian Nagelsmann having relatively recently took on the job, and it never felt like it was kind of opening up for him really. So that's an interesting one that he's got that clause in that contract. So I guess it's kind of, as you say, kind of a little bit of a holding role for him until that comes up. So that seems like the clear path really, is that he's going to do this until that comes up. And I think that'd be a great way for him to retire from management, is doing that job and going in there. And I think, everyone in Germany absolutely loves him. I think he'd be a good fit, and it's less intense than club management. So, I'm sure he'd be excited to take that role on when it comes up. But I just thought he maybe would kind of hang fire and maybe do nothing till then and sit on a sun lounger. But maybe he feels that it's important that he's close to football, that he's seeing, tactical developments and talking to people who are involved in it on a day-to-day basis, to keep his kind of eye in a little bit before, maybe the Germany job does eventually come up. Maybe that is kind of the thinking behind it.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I've seen a few people suggesting, has he gone in there to try to help out his mate Linders at Salzburg? He's struggled the last few weeks, but it'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. We've seen at the start of this week that Joel Kwanzaa has committed his future to the club with a new long-term deal, and I think there was a few reports suggesting that Konate is very close. And then obviously we have Paul Joyce coming out and kind of giving a non-negative update on the other three, but just a bit more, there's a bit of an impasse got there. What's the latest with them for contracts? And
Yeah, so Konate, obviously, that the expectation is that that's moving pretty smoothly now, and I would expect that to get done from my perspective. That's what I'm kind of hearing. Glad to hear that, by the way, because I think it was massively going under the radar for me that he got within 2 years of his contract. I mean, we're inside that now, actually.
You were the one that brought that to my attention. Yeah, I had no idea. You mentioned it with Craig a few weeks ago. It's crazy you got to that smaller contract.
It's surprising that they kind of let it get to that, and I think it speaks to the fact that there was a little bit of uncertainty around him as well, in terms of, particularly back half of last season he was a bit in or out. But obviously, the new regime's come in and said that we have to sort this. This is a player who's coming in to his peak years. He's very, very good. I think he's really reminded people this season as well of just how good he is. probably better on the ball than he gets credit for. Unbelievable defender. So really, really good news to get him tied down. And in terms of what happens with the other three, they are obviously the main talking point at the moment, and it's an interesting one. But I think it was perceived negatively that the word impasse was used, but I still think there's a positive to be taken there, which is that we know probably 4 or 5 weeks ago that talks hadn't even started, particularly with Salah and Van Dijk, and that had moved nowhere. Now that we're at somewhere where we're saying an impasse, but that back and forth negotiation is going on, I think is massively encouraging and suggests that movements are being made towards keeping them. I still think that the number one priority and the one they have to nail down as soon as humanly possible is Trent. He's just too important. Give him what he wants, give him the length of contract, give him what he wants payment wise, because I just think it looks so bad to lose a player of that quality, who is the emblem of the club, and he's a local lad. They have to get that sorted, and then the other two can, maybe you start to wedge towards January with those two, but. Yeah, they've kind of. I think it's not as negative as an update as it maybe was perceived, but I still think got to move quickly with that Trent one. You do not want to give Real Madrid the chance to really sit down with him and thrash out what a move to Madrid would look like, because I think no matter how big a Liverpool fan you are, that would be massively appealing to go and play with Jude Bellingham, to go and probably win the European Cup every year. I think what in saying that, actually, I think what Liverpool have got to sell to him is that they can be that club. They can get back there. That's got to be the aim, is to sell that to him. But as I say, move quickly, because January's coming around quickly, and Madrid will be able to put numbers in front of him and make his decision a lot more difficult.
I was saying this morning that Curtis Jones has been called up to the England squad. I've seen a few people suggest that Arne Slot sent him in now to spy on Trent and Jude to try to get him out of his ear. And there was other reports, and I think it was Facajes in Spain were suggesting that Madrid were going to make a £10 million bid for Trent in January. I can't see that being a thing, or the club even entertaining that.
No, I think Liverpool would rather lose him on a free than accept a sort of low ball bid at this point of the season. So I'd say regardless of what happens with Trent, whether he signs a new deal or not, he will absolutely be at Liverpool until the end of this season. But the hope is, and there's optimism on Liverpool's side that his stay will be much longer than that. So it's just a case of waiting for that to be sorted out. Hopefully we start to hear news soon.
I hope so. Like you said, at least talks are now underway, so we should see some sort of progress soon, hopefully. There's a few transfer links during the week as well. We've been linked with Omar Marmoush of Frankfurt, who's been linked a few times in the past, but never really anything serious. But he's had 6 games in the Bundesliga this season, scored 8 goals and 4 assists. So it makes sense. That's why we're looking at him. But then it's been touted that he's a Salah replacement, but he's more of an out and out forward striker, as far as I can tell. So maybe would that play into maybe Darwin struggling for form as well, and a bit of Salah possibly leaving as well? There's more forward options.
Yeah, the thing you've got to consider, I think, with these stories, and they do pop up from time to time with a transfer link, is it's not always kind of, Liverpool watch an awful lot of players. So Marmoush, I've absolutely no doubt really that they are looking at him. His numbers look decent for the last couple of seasons. He's around that age that Liverpool do like to scout, where he's kind of just about to hit his peak years and coming into that. So would be an ideal sign in that regard. But as you say, in terms of profile at centre forward, they're kind of all right at the moment there. They've got 2 there who can play there. I think we might maybe see Chiesa in a central role from time to time as well. So it's not necessarily desperate, definitely looking at him with a view to, we're going to make a move for him next summer. It's kind of, as I say, he'll be on their radar 100%, but it's more with a view to, okay, if something happens in this position, if we get to the end of the season, it's not working out for Darwin and we think we can sell him and a spot opens up, he's maybe someone who's on the list. So there's loads of players like that, so many players who are getting linked at the moment who can play maybe kind of right wing and be Salah's position. Again, their preference would be to sign him to a contract that suits both parties, but you've got to be ready for if that doesn't happen. So Marmoush, like I say, I think that's a link that kind of makes sense in terms of profile, but it's not a position Liverpool are desperate in. But of course, then things can change, and maybe it could be Nunez moving on, or they feel they need something different in centre forward area. Then maybe that's something we start to see firmed up as we move towards the summer. But that is, so much has got to happen for that to come off. But it's just a case of kind of keeping an eye on his development and seeing how he does, and then maybe he will be an option for Liverpool going forward.
That makes sense, yeah. And on Darwin, How likely do you think it is he could be moved on at the end of the season? I know you've kind of spoke on your Substack as well about maybe to make or break from this season. Like, have you heard anything from within the club of what they're making of his performances lately, or what they want from him?
I don't think anyone within the club would be quite as cutting as to call it a make or break season as I did, but I think there's a feeling that it kind of is that. No one would directly say that, but third season performance is not quite hitting the levels. I know he got a few goals and assists last season, quite a significant amount, but still never felt like he was consistently playing really, really well for Liverpool. So, and the fact is that Liverpool, if they want to get back to where they want to get to, they need players who are going to be consistent week in, week out and perform at that level, be able to do it in the Champions League and, be able to do both sides of the role as a centre forward, which is, scoring goals, finishing off your chances, being careful with possession and build up and being a threat there. So, and I still just don't think he's kind of showing that yet. And the fact is that, you could say he's not had a lot of opportunities, but we're 2 months into the season, and one of the reasons he's not had opportunities is because the manager's looking at him in training and doesn't think that it's worth dropping Jota for. So, if that's the case and he's low down the pecking order, you're paying him what you're paying. There are clubs that I'm sure would be interested in him of a certain level. Absolutely. Maybe clubs in Spain would have a look. I just think that's, as I said, kind of feels like we'll get to the end of the season. And if that is not, if he hasn't absolutely lit it up in the next sort of 8 months or so, then Liverpool will feel that it's probably time to move him on, and that it's just kind of not worked out. And that happens with different players for different reasons, by the way. It's no kind of reflection on Darwin, and I'm sure he could be a success elsewhere, but the signs point to the fact that at the moment it's not looking likely he'll get to the end of the season and continue as a Liverpool player. That's kind of my take on it.
I think that's fair. Yeah, on balance, yeah, he has to perform. Otherwise, you do have to look elsewhere. So, I was moving on to other news this week that broke: the Man City Premier League court case, which has caused a bit of confusion because it's almost like both sides are claiming victory here. So it's hard to know which way it's actually gone. So, like, for people who don't know what the case was about associated party transactions. So basically, was it the owners basically having friendly companies pumping money into the clubs at a non-fair market value? Can you take us through a little bit about like what the actual outcome of that was, or what the repercussions might be?
Yeah, so as you say, both sides claiming victories, but the fact is that of multiple points that were made in the judgment, really City only get 2 or 3 wins, I think it is. And some of those are on technicalities. One of the kind of big wins, which is not actually something City were necessarily massively chasing, was on the fact that if you take loans from your owner, you now would have to get those at fair market value, which is, i.e. not interest free. They would have to pay interest on those. So, Liverpool have got a kind of it's quite large, but relatively small, in terms of what some of the other owner loans across the Premier League are for using for the main stand to build that. That's one of the big amounts of money that FSG have pumped in. So, but the thing is, they're not going to backdate these, so Liverpool are never going to have to pay interest on that. FSG can kind of do it's any owner loans you get going forward, and the fact is Liverpool aren't reliant on that at all. So that's not a huge point for them, really. It's not something that's hugely significant, but probably could be for other clubs. For example, maybe Brighton, who've had a lot of money pumped in by Tony Bloom. And in terms of other wins, really, it was kind of, the Premier League got criticised for not coming back to Manchester City quickly enough in terms of judging what some of their deals were for fair market value, which again I think is a fair point. You've got to be speedy about these things if you can. And another kind of minor technical point was in terms of access to data that the Premier League hold on what would be fair market value. That the clubs believe that, or City push for the idea that clubs should be able to access that to be able to benchmark, and that would be more helpful to them than going in blind. So, like I say, a couple of wins for Manchester City in there, but as I say, the findings really underlined that for PSR rules or any sort of financial controls to work, you do need controls over associated party transactions. The idea that Newcastle could ask a Saudi company to sponsor them for $1 billion, they accept that wouldn't be right. So, if City's aim was to completely undermine associated party transaction rules, then they've failed on that front, and I suspect that was surely their aim. I don't think, without having completely undermined them and actually having strengthened them because the findings support these rules, in no way helps them with the case against the 115 charges. It doesn't really massively help them in the long term. And I thought their statement suggesting they had won really, I just didn't buy into that at all. I just think they're kind of trying to control the narrative around that a little bit. But I'm sure there will be more fallout, probably more legal challenges. City are doing everything they can, aren't they, to kind of disrupt things and make things difficult for the Premier League. And that's really it's kind of upsetting to watch from the outside, someone who just wants the football to be played and not to be dragged through the courts. But, it kind of is what it is. But yeah, I don't think it'll have, to kind of summarise, I don't think the rulings won't have a big impact on Liverpool at all. I don't think they massively help City. I think City won on a few points, but the Premier League overwhelmingly won the remainder of the points. So, it's just one of those. I don't think overall the impact of it is particularly large at all. And as I say, don't really think it helps City in their 115, which is, I think, the thing that most people are interested in.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose if they had won this, it would set a precedent moving forward for some of the stuff they are being accused of, wouldn't it? There was also a report this morning, I think it was Sam Wallace of the Telegraph, suggesting that like Man City, the other clubs are kind of accusing them of trying to run the Premier League. So apparently they emailed out to the other 19 clubs basically saying that the APT rules are all void. Like it's just ridiculous with the stuff they're trying to do.
This is the thing, the findings absolutely did not support the case that the APT rules are void. It in no way did that. It absolutely backed up that they have to exist and said, you can make these minor tweaks, i.e. getting back to clubs quicker, things like that. But they are minor tweaks. And the fact is that, I think the fact that City are going out there and suggesting that the void is that they really did want from this case to get proof that the APT rules, in entirety weren't fair and couldn't be applied. And that is absolutely not what happened. So, like I say, I think that is a defeat for City, really, even though they won't admit it. And if they had a victory on that front, it would have had, I think, a massive influence on the 115 case in terms of being able to go to that tribunal and say, look, well, these rules have been found unfair, so why should we have followed them? And not being able to do that, doesn't help City at all in terms of that case, and is maybe a bit of a concern for them. And I think, some of the actions in terms of emailing other clubs and things that have been written by favourable journalists, I think it's kind of a case of trying to win the PR war rather than actually having won anything in the courtroom, really, that is of any significance whatsoever.
Yeah, anything that doesn't help their case will take as a win anyway. So hopefully they should get their punishment at some point. Before I let you go, David, can you let us know what's coming up on your Substack or what you're up to for the next couple of weeks? What's coming up?
Yeah, so while it's the international break, doing a few more kind of deep dives and stuff. I wrote something about the medical team there yesterday, and I've got something coming up on Ryan Gravenberch, a few interviews with people who worked with him when he was younger, and Ryan Babel, actually one of them who played with him at Ajax. So that's coming up over the next sort of week or so. So looking forward to getting that one out. And yeah, as ever, please do check that Substack out. I've got a new address for it now, so davidlynchlfc.co.uk you can find it at. And obviously have a look at my YouTube as well, which is at David Lynch LFC.
Perfect. Well, all the links will be in the description for everyone to check that out. David, thank you very much for your time. Craig will be back next week, so I won't be here. So just hit the subscribe button before you leave, and thank you very much for watching.